Hello, Neogenians. Welcome to Dawn of the New Earth. We talk a lot on this channel about how many Gnostics viewed Earth as a prison, trapping souls in a lower domain and a lower state of consciousness. Today, we're taking a look at the banned Gospel of Mary Magdalene, where Mary reveals why most souls never escape. And we're going to be also discussing how to overcome the things that keep us trapped here. It's going to be really good. We're going to get started right now. But as always, I want to remind you, we are way more than a channel. We are a revolution of the mind, here to make higher consciousness go viral and spread like fire, what the church tried to destroy thousands of years ago. So make sure you hit like, share, and subscribe to spread this across the internet. We're reaching millions every month, and it's thanks to you. So make sure you hit like, share, subscribe. If you want to help out even more, become a member on YouTube or on Patreon. You get access to a lot of great stuff like members only videos, free downloads on inner transformation and more. It helps out a lot. And you can also support by checking out my books. I am a Neogenian, and I've written a 5-part series on the Neogenian system. Here is one of them. And if you're looking for a free way to support, an excellent free way to support is by following me on Spotify. I have a Spotify channel. It's totally free to do, and it helps out. We're reaching even more people over there on that platform. We're spreading the fire over there. So make sure you give me a follow. And links to all those things, they're in the description of this video. But let's get started here. So we're discussing Mary Magdalene and her role as revealing the secret teachings of Jesus. So the Gospel of Mary essentially explores this idea of Mary Magdalene having been told secrets by Jesus Christ, and she's revealing them. And the thing that she reveals is precisely what traps souls in a lower domain, a lower state. And there are a couple things that we really need to understand, some symbolism that we need to understand for how Mary is able to see this vision, how Mary is able to access this secret before we understand the secret itself. So let's talk about what makes Mary Magdalene so special and how she is able to perceive this vision and see the secret knowledge. Okay, so first of all, in the Gospel of Philip, it says that that Jesus used to kiss Mary often on her mouth. This is symbolic for the transmission of knowledge or gnosis. So Jesus kissing Mary is a symbol of their union and transmission. It's symbolic. It's not about a literal marriage. Maybe they were married, maybe they weren't. I don't know. That's not what we're concerned about on this channel. We're concerned with what these things really mean, the secrets behind the story. So the secret behind the story of Mary Magdalene and Jesus kissing is the transfer of knowledge and a union. Furthermore, in the Gospel of Philip, the disciples say, "Hey, Jesus, why do you love Mary more than all of us?" And Jesus basically says this. He says something along the lines of, if you're in the dark and then you turn on the light, the people that are in the dark who are blind, even if light comes on, they can't see it. But those who can see the light. So if you have a group of people, let's say one of them can see and the rest are blind, they're in the dark. In the dark state, they all see the same thing, even the person who can see, they're in darkness. But when the light comes on, the blind people are still in darkness, while the person who can see perceives the light. Again, this is nothing about disabilities or anything to do with literal blindness. This is symbolic for spiritual blindness. And so essentially what Jesus is saying is that I love Mary more than all of you because she can see the light you guys can't. She has the eyes to see, the ears to hear, and in the Gospel of Mary, the mind to understand. And that's going to be really important. Actually, let me make... So let's talk about why this matters. So Jesus and Mary represent this union. And symbolically speaking, Jesus and Mary represent the unification of soul and spirit. Jesus represents spirit and Mary represents soul. And I'll explain a little bit about what that means. But the reason why that I'm prefacing all this is because you'll see why in a minute now that we turn to the Gospel of Mary. because we were talking about the Gospel of Philip. Gospel of Philip, Jesus and Mary kiss. They're considered married. And the disciples are like, hey, why do you love Mary more than us? And Jesus is like, well, because she gets it, basically. She can see, she can understand. So now turning to the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, Jesus basically, he teaches the disciples a little bit, then he disappears. This is after the resurrection. He disappears, goes back to heaven or wherever an enlightened being goes after having to teach the disciples 100 times over and them not really getting it. So Jesus is gone and the disciples are freaking out. They're crying and scared and they're like, oh my God, what are we going to do? They killed Jesus. Now they're definitely going to kill us. Oh no. So they're all freaking out. They're chaotic. They're scared. They're crying. But Mary steps up. And Mary steps up and says that she greeted them. And she said to her brothers and sisters, don't weep and grieve or let your hearts be divided, because his grace will be with you and will protect you. He's prepared us and made us true humans. Okay, so this is important to understand. Jesus left, the disciples are freaking out, and Mary essentially steps into the role that Jesus had. She is now leader and teacher. She is consoling the disciples, and she is teaching the disciples, and will continue to teach the disciples. So she's almost this successor to Christ in our story here. And what she actually says is important, because right before Jesus disappears, Jesus says this. He tells the disciples, don't let anyone mislead you by saying, look over here or look over there, because the Son of Humanity, Christ, exists within you. Follow him. Those who seek will find him. That's super important. Jesus is saying, I am not going to come back as a person that you can point to. If anyone is pointing and saying the Christ is there, Jesus is there, a savior is, even just in general, a savior figure is over there, they are wrong, because Christ exists within you. Those who seek will find him. So Christ, this higher state of consciousness, exists within you, and you have to look inside to find it. Every single one of us has this Christ principle within us. The Christ principle is like this call to awakening. And that's why Christ represents spirit. Spirit is our connection to divinity, essentially. It's our divine calling. So Jesus is like, hey, savior figures don't exist in external people. I am inside you. Look within, you'll find me. Don't look anywhere else. So that's really important. Christ is a state of consciousness that you find by looking within. Jesus said the same thing about the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven is not a place you can point to. It's within you. So same thing. Divinity is inside you. The kingdom of heaven, Jesus Christ, that's all in you as parts of you. Not like you're being possessed by Jesus, but rather it's a symbolic for a principle that exists within you. And that's why then Mary says, hey, don't be scared, don't weep or grieve, or let your hearts be divided, because his grace will be with you. Christ, so basically Mary's saying, look, you're not listening to what Christ just said. He just said that he is inside you, so seek him and follow him within you. Follow that principle within you. Activate that you must be your own savior. And that's why she also says he prepared us and made us true humans. By true humans, what she means is complete and integrated, not like humans like we understand them, but full, holy, complete beings. All right, that's what that means. The true humanity, or the perfect humanity in Gnosticism, is our divine beings. Okay, so basically made us true humans. It's like, well, he made us, he's preparing us to be divine. Okay, so Mary's like, don't freak out, everyone, calm down, don't lose your shit. And then Peter says this, because remember in the Gospel of Philip, the disciples are like, hey, Jesus, why do you love Mary more than us? And Jesus is like, well, because Mary can see and you guys can't. Now in the Gospel of Mary, we get this confirmation, because Peter says this. Peter says to Mary, sister, We know the Savior loved you more than all the other women. Tell us the word. Hey, notice he doesn't want to say more than us. He just says all other women. No, Peter later in this book gets really misogynistic. He hates that Mary is a woman and can't stand the fact that she got secret knowledge. He's super jealous. So, he's not going to say loved you more than all of us. But in the Gospel of Philip, we see that is the case. Anyway, Peter says, tell us the words of the Savior that you remember, the things that you know that we don't and which we haven't heard. And then so Mary says, I'll tell you what's hidden from you. So Mary is again stepping into the role, this Christ role of teacher and leader. And so what Mary does is she begins to describe a vision that she had. And this is key. Understanding this vision is key. And so Mary has a vision. She not right now, but she's describing to the disciples a vision that she had. And she tells them that she had a vision of Jesus. But here's the interesting thing. After her vision of Jesus, she actually goes to Jesus and says this, Lord, how does one see a vision? Through the soul or the spirit? This is extremely important. There's so much symbolism loaded just in there alone. First of all, Mary gets straight to the heart of the matter or the mind of the matter. She wants to know how this works. She's not asking about, oh, teach me how to be a good person or let me worship you or praise you. No, she's saying, I had this vision. How do visions work? How does one see them? How does that knowledge get transmitted in the first place? Is it through the soul or the spirit? How does one see the vision? Remember, Mary has, in the Gospel of Philip, Mary's been described as the one who sees while the others are blind. And here she's seeing the vision. And also remember that Jesus and Mary in the Gospel of Philip represent soul and spirit. And so, but those are principles that exist within all of us have both soul and spirit. So, because it's symbolic. Adam and Eve represent soul and spirit as fractured. Mary and Jesus represent soul and spirit as integrated or married. Okay? So, but Mary's described as one who can see. Now she's saying, well, hey, Jesus, how does one see? Is it through our souls or through our spirit that we're able to perceive this hidden knowledge? And here's what's interesting. Jesus says, they do not see through the soul, nor through the spirit, but the mind which exists between the two is what sees the vision. Now you see this all lines up. Because just soul and spirit, when they're divided, aren't going to do much for you. But when they're united, that is what, when they're married, Jesus and Mary, as the bride and bridegroom, soul and spirit coming together, that is what allows one to see the spirit. So it's not the soul or the spirit alone that sees the vision, not division, the vision. It's not the soul or the spirit. But when the soul and spirit unite, in that overlap, in that unity, that's what see the vision. It's not the soul by itself or the spirit by itself. It's the soul and spirit that this new higher consciousness, the mind between, gives rise to. So this mind between is the higher consciousness. So basically he's saying it's not exclusively the soul or exclusively the spirit, it's higher consciousness that is able to perceive the vision, aka understand hidden knowledge. So let's talk a little bit about this integration of opposites. So in the Neogenian system, we call your inner opposite the mirror self. And it's about becoming whole and marrying all these different functions within yourself. So let's talk about, so it could be, let's say, reason, logic, emotions, intuition, sensing, introversion, extroversion. We all have elements of all these things within us, but most of us prefer one or the other or develop one or the other more while the others are underdeveloped. Okay? So when we develop these faculties within us, though, we give rise to a more complete vision of reality. Because if you think of a scientist who's purely scientific, they're not going to be able to understand reality if they don't have any intuition. They'll just see reality as a dead mechanical system. They're like cold calculators. Likewise, if you have a intuitive mystic who completely rejects logic and reason, they won't be able to tell fantasy from reality. They'll get lost in delusion. But if you marry the two and you have logic married with intuition, now you're able to have the insight of what reality is and use logic and reason to parse it and integrate it and interconnect it and get the big picture. Okay, so it's kind of like saying, like, look, you can't understand reality through just one thing or the other. You need this holistic combination. So in a sense, we can kind of understand soul and spirit loosely as like left brain and right brain, where soul would be more associated with left brain and spirit would more be associated with right brain. Right brain that sees things in wholes, that is related to the unconscious and the collective unconscious, our connection to the deep sea of ourselves and existence and reality. And then the left brain is more associated with analytical linear thought, putting things in categories, categorization, language, math, reason, etc. Now, please remember, I'm being very simplified. I'm simplifying things here. This dual hemisphere model of the brain, this brain lateralization, is a very simplified model. It's not completely accurate. It just gets us in the right ballpark. And associating with soul and spirit isn't completely accurate either. I'm just trying to get you a quick and dirty way to kind of get a grasp on what's being spoken about here. So really, if we want to get down to it, soul kind of represents our human qualities and spirit represents our divine qualities. So you could also almost think of the soul as like ego consciousness and spirit as like higher consciousness or the higher self. The higher self is a better phrasing than higher consciousness, the higher self. So marrying soul and spirit is about marrying all opposites together, including the alignment of the human and the divine, or ego consciousness and your higher self. And so when you marry these things two together, now you can see the vision. When you have both reason and intuition working together, you can understand reality. If you just have one or the other, you're going to have a lopsided, incomplete view. You need both ultimately to truly perceive and experience and connect the whole thing into a holistic image. So it's through the unification of the opposites. It's by reintegrating your psyche that you're able to see the vision. Now, why I'm explaining this, because this is super important and practical to us, because Jesus is essentially explaining how to come to higher consciousness, how to arrive at higher consciousness, how to become divine. It's at the intersection between these two elements, soul and spirit, or our divinity and our humanity together, not as enemies, but working together, married together. Okay? So anyway, that was a lot on that, but it's important. So Mary is able to see this vision. Mary is able to see. She has the eyes to see. Why does she have the eyes to see? Because she is able to see through the mind between, the marriage of soul and spirit. She has Christ consciousness. She has become a Christ. And so, let's see here. Also, Jesus makes it very, very explicit, right? Because remember, he says, oh, well, it's not in the soul or the spirit, but the mind between the two, the integration. He also says, for where the mind is, there is the treasure. Where higher consciousness is, there is the treasure. Where higher consciousness is the kingdom of God. So for where the mind is, there is the treasure. The treasure, the gold, the true, what you're seeking, what's really important is the mind. And when I say mind, I don't mean our human, egoic, analytical mind. That would just be soul. I mean our conscious mind fully integrated. Well, not fully, it'll never be fully integrated until the end of time. But when you begin that integration, that's what gives rise to higher consciousness, those opposites, where you're developing both left brain and right brain qualities in harmony and in unison. That's super hard for people to do. People usually, someone who's really into, let's say, mysticism and tarot cards, last thing they want to do is join a mathematics class or start studying heavy philosophy. And people who are really into those things usually look at tarot cards and mysticism and go, that's just woo-woo bullshit. There's nothing important there. When really, yeah, there is. It's about both coming together, and they're complementary. They're complementary. Not free complementary like complimentary chocolate, but they're complementary in that they come together, they complement each other. So that's important. You got to do that. You got to have this integration. In the Neogenian system, we call this the mirror self. It's your inner opposite. For where the mind is, there is the treasure. You'll find the truth when you integrate your opposites together. And doesn't this earlier Jesus said, anyone who has a mind to understand, let him understand. And that makes a lot more sense, doesn't it? Because in the Bible, Jesus is always saying things like, oh, whoever has the ears to hear, let them hear. Whoever has the eyes to see, let them see. And that's symbolic, of course. But here, Jesus is just like super explicit and just saying, whoever has the mind to understand, let him understand. Anyone who has unified, integrated soul and spirit has the mind between to understand. Practically speaking, it's about developing our complements, our opposites, our underdeveloped faculties. That's how we give rise to higher consciousness. Don't believe me? Try it. Because most people hate it. Most people hate doing the things that they've underdeveloped because they've ignored the underdeveloped things because they don't really like them. So it's very hard to do. That's why most people don't do it. But it's crucial and it's critical. So let's see. Okay, so Mary now has this mind to see, this capability of vision. So what is she has the capability to understand the secrets, and we know how and why now. So what is the secret? Okay, so the Gospel of Mary is in fragments. It got all fucked up. So we don't have all of it. So the manuscript breaks off, but then resumes in the middle of the vision that Mary is having. And that's okay, though, because we can figure out where it's like it's like walking into a movie 30 minutes late. If you walk into a movie 30 minutes late, it might be a little confusing for the first 10 minutes or so, but then you're going to pretty much get it. There's going to be callbacks to things that happened earlier. The villain's going to reveal itself. Like you'll pretty much get the gist of it. So this starts off in the middle of Mary's vision. So what is the vision that Mary is having? So Mary is describing the soul's ascent through different layers of existence. And as it does so, it is removing itself from the forces that lock it down and imprison it in a lower state. So what Mary is describing is going to be describing why most souls never rise above into a higher state, because of these forces that are blocking it, which is going to be explained right now. So basically, the soul is journeying upward, pulling itself and becoming more and more clear, while it leaves behind the world of habit, fear, forgetfulness, ignorance, etc. But as it rises, there are dark forces blocking its way. And the point here is that liberation and enlightenment isn't automatic. It doesn't happen just because you read a book or do some mushrooms or anything like that. That's not what's going to do it. Those things can help, but remember, when it comes to psychedelics, don't do anything dangerous or illegal. But you get the idea. Certain things like books, like the video you're watching right now, they can help. But ultimately, if you just watch a couple videos, you're not just going to walk away, automatically enlightened. You have to do the work yourself. Because, for example, in this video, I'm talking about, okay, if you want to reach higher consciousness, you have to integrate your opposites. If you just watch the video and you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. You have to integrate your opposites, but you don't do anything about it, you're not going to reach higher consciousness. You actually have to start developing your inner opposite. That's the difference here. You have to put in the work, not just know it like a fact that you've collected like a trading card. You have to put it into practice. So the soul ascends, and as the soul ascends, it encounters what Mary calls the powers. And if you know anything about Gnosticism, these are essentially archons. And these are basically personified forces of oppression. They block the soul. They're like cosmic guards keeping consciousness locked down, locking and limiting the soul. And so the soul is now going to confront these powers, these archons. And because this manuscript is, worse than a corrupted PDF file, we don't have the first encounter. Because it picks up right in the second encounter, because she's going to encounter these different forces. Now, we can understand, and I'll show you why later in the text, we can understand that the first power that she encountered was darkness. Now, we don't really know what she said or what darkness said, but that's fine. We don't really have to get to that. Just know that she's now encountering the soul's now encountering the second power. And what's the second power? The second power is called desire. That's the second power that the soul is confronting, the second force that locks the soul, tries to lock the soul down. And what does desire represent? Things that, like old habits, cravings, weaknesses, things that hide within you that pull you away from higher things. And so desire says this to the soul. The archon of desire says this, speaks out to the soul. I didn't see you going down, but now I see you're going up. So why are you lying since you belong to me? Basically, the archon is being like, look, I own you. You think you're going up? You're trying to tell me you're going up? You're a liar. You're not going anywhere because you belong to me. And that's what desire, it's this web of urges, cravings, addictions, and attachments that keep our soul anchored into a lower state of consciousness, not allowing us to rise. Where are you going? You're not going anywhere. I own you. That's what it's saying. Now, to be clear, there is nothing wrong with desire itself, at least in the Neogenian interpretation. There's nothing wrong with desire itself. Desire is part of being alive. It is what drives you. But if desire rules you, archon means ruler. If desire rules you, then it's a problem. But if you use desire as fuel and motivation, then it's actually a good thing. So you can see the difference. Whereas, let's say that you're trying to work out and stay healthy, but you have the desire to eat the 5-pound chocolate cake. It's a lot of chocolate cake. Obviously, if you do that, then your desire is ruling you. But guess what? Desire can also be a good thing, because what is motivating you to want to work out? Well, a desire to be healthy. So that's the idea here. It's about this alignment. If your desire is aligned with your elevated will, your higher goals, then it's working for you. If it is not and pulling away from your higher goals and appealing to your lower nature, then it rules you. It's an archon. Okay, so I just want to be clear. It's not this don't desire anything. No, desire is fine. But let it empower you, not rule you. That's the difference. Okay? So, Mary describes that the soul replies to desire, because desire is just like, hey, you're telling me you're going up? No, you're not. You're a liar. You belong to me. And this is what the soul said in response. I saw you, but you didn't see me or know me. I was to you just a garment, and you didn't recognize me. So what's the soul saying here? Basically saying, look, I saw you, meaning I know what you are. I see what you're trying to do. I recognize these lower desires in my, I see what you're trying to do. I saw you, but you didn't see me. Meaning this force of desire didn't see the higher aspect, the higher self, like desire. And furthermore, the soul says, I was to you just a garment and you didn't recognize me. So basically the soul, the desire didn't really understand the soul's true nature. It was just pulling at our garments, or what our true self wears. And in this sense, the soul is basically being like, look, I know, I see what you're trying to do. I'm not falling for that bullshit. You don't even know what I am. So desire didn't know what it was dealing with. Sorry, I'm just making a note to myself. Sometimes I get epiphanies and I write them down because I don't want to forget them. All right, so let's continue. So the soul's like, nah, you're wrong. You don't know who I am. I know who you are, and you can fuck off. And so the soul overcomes desire. Desire is like, oh no, you got me, and I don't know, disintegrates into the abyss or something. So, but then Mary isn't done. Mary confronts the second, or this would be the third, because the first was darkness, but we didn't get to see that showdown. It started it off with the second, which is desire. But anyway, she confronts the third. And the third is called ignorance. And this is a lot more insidious than desire. Because really think about what's more dangerous, ignorance or desire? Ignorance is way more dangerous than desire, because ignorance is often why we desire things that are bad for us. So the soul comes to the third power, and it says the power is called ignorance, or it's the archon of ignorance, and it interrogates the soul. So you'll notice about this archon of ignorance is that it's very accusatory, it's very judgmental, and it's very forceful. And it says this. It says, where are you going? That's what all these archons are saying. Like, wait a minute, you're going up? No, you're not. You're not going up. You're staying down. And then now that's what desire said. Now ignorance is like going, wait. Where do you think you're going? In wickedness, you're bound. Since you're bound, don't judge. So essentially what ignorance is trying to do is shame the soul so that it doesn't go up. Basically saying, this is like ignorance of your divinity, basically. Like ignorance of your true self. And so what ignorance is saying to the soul is, you're wicked. You don't get to go up. You're a dirty, broken, rotten, flawed sinner. I mean, I'm an ex-Christian and I know how that feels. And many of you probably know that as well. If you think that you are a dirty, broken, fundamentally flawed sinner, you will never look for the divinity within yourself, because you're not taught that you're fundamentally divine. You're taught that you're fundamentally broken. So that's what ignorance is doing here. Ignorance of your true self, your higher self. Ignorance is saying, you're not going anywhere. You're wicked. You can't go anywhere. And so it's trying to convince the soul that it's basically like sinful and cut off from divinity. But the soul responds. Mary tells us that this is what the soul says. Why do you judge me since I haven't judged? I was bound even though I haven't bound. All right, so what's the soul saying here? The soul's essentially saying, you're accusing me. So there's a couple parts of this. First of all, you're accusing me. I'm not the one condemning people. You're projecting your judgment onto me, because remember the ignorance is like, where are you going? You're bound in wickedness, and so you're bound, so don't judge. And the soul's like, I'm not judging anybody. You're judging me. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? You're judging me. I'm not judging anybody. And I was bound, but I haven't bound anybody. So the soul is acknowledging that it was once bound. Like, yeah, you're right. I used to be in a lower state of consciousness. I used to think I was dirty, flawed, and sinful. I was bound. But the soul didn't bind anybody. Like, I was bound, but I didn't bind anyone. In other words, this would be saying basically like being bound, because the soul is accusing, or the archon of ignorance is accusing the soul of being wicked and judging and all this. And the soul's like, look, you're judging me. And yeah, I was bound, but I didn't judge anybody and I didn't bind anyone. So what this essentially means is that being bound is not wicked. Binding others is wicked. Because if you're bound, it's not your fault. You know, again, I was taught that I was a dirty, rotten, flawed sinner, fundamentally broken. It's not my fault. Did I believe that? When you're indoctrinated, as soon as you're born, you're indoctrinated into this. Is that your fault? No. If you were indoctrinated into a system that told you were sinful, is that your fault? No. The fact that you were bound up doesn't make you bad. What is bad is binding others up. So the soul is trying to be prevented from rising by ignorance, by saying like, look, you're wicked, you can't rise. But the soul sees through this and it's like, no, that's bullshit. The soul admits like, yeah, I was once caught in the illusion, but I'm not anymore. So fuck off. And okay, actually the soul has a follow-up. The soul isn't done. So the soul follows up with this. They didn't recognize me, but I've recognized that everything will dissolve, both the things of the earth and the things of heaven. So the soul is essentially demonstrating that it's no longer trapped in a lower state of consciousness. It's in a higher state of consciousness. Because that's the whole thing. The ignorance is being like, you're not reaching higher. You're bound in wickedness. You're not going anywhere. And the soul is like, no, I am. I was once in this lower state of illusion and lower consciousness, but now I'm in a higher consciousness. And look, I can prove it. I have recognized that everything will dissolve, both the things of heaven and earth. Basically, the soul sees the truth now and is essentially proving it. It knows its true self is from the light, not matter. And it recognizes that everything ignorance uses to define reality is temporary. The things of the earth dissolve, even the things of heaven dissolve, the archons dissolve. The only thing that is eternal is light. And that is what we are. We are light. We are eternal light. Everything is an expression of light. Everything comes from light. It is very similar to a hologram. So the soul has overcome 3 powers, or 3 archons. We didn't get to see with the battle between the first, but it was darkness. So let's talk about this, because now the soul confronts something very different. It says, when the soul has overcome the 3rd power, it went up and saw the 4th power, which took 7 forms. So this 4th power has 7 forms. So this is like the final boss battle. This is the health bar popping up on the screen and the epic music starting to play. No save points allowed. This is the final battle here. And it says this. This power is different. It has 7 forms, basically like 7 interlocking systems of oppression. 7 forces of oppression combined into one. And Mary names each of them. Darkness, desire, ignorance, zeal for death, the kingdom of the flesh, the foolish wisdom of flesh, and the wisdom of anger. So there's a lot to unpack here. But the first thing I want you to notice is that the first 3 powers listed are the same ones that the soul has already conquered individually. What are the first three of the 7 formed archon? The first 3 are darkness, desire, and ignorance. But we know that the page is missing, but the soul confronted darkness, and we just saw it confront desire, and we just saw it confront ignorance. So what's going on here? Why is it just repeating itself? No. Basically, what's happening is that Mary defeated these archons individually, but now they're all coming together. They aren't totally separate forces. They're pieces of a larger system. You ever see Power Rangers? They had these different machines called Zords that they would fly around in, and then there was like 5 of them or something, and then they could all combine together into one Megazord. It's kind of like that. These are the Power Rangers from hell. You have these 7 archons that are individual, but then combine to form this Megazord of the abyss. Evil Megazord. Archonic Megazord. And Mary names this being of 7, and calls it the 7 powers of wrath. And here, in this context, wrath doesn't just mean rage. It means the whole machinery of attack. It's an aggressive system that keeps consciousness trapped. So when we're talking about the 7 powers of wrath, we're not just talking about like 7 forms of anger necessarily. We're talking about 7 powers of attack, 7 powers of aggression that keep the soul in bondage. All of them are aggressive. Darkness is aggressive. Desire is aggressive. Ignorance is aggressive. Zeal for death is aggressive. The kingdom of the flesh is you get the idea. They're all. That's why there's 7 powers of wrath. There are these 7 powers of aggression. Okay, so here's the interesting thing. There's this whole interlocking machinery, and they all work together to keep consciousness trapped. Darkness, what does it do? Darkness conceals the truth. Desire rules you through craving. Ignorance justifies staying blind. You're dirty, you're wicked, you're bound. That's why you're blind. Zeal for death makes the soul cling to things that are dead and destructive. The kingdom of the flesh traps the soul in identifying with its body. And foolish wisdom makes falsehood seem enlightened. Buy my new enlightenment quantum crystal for $111.11, and you'll get my full quantum course on ascension. That's the foolish wisdom of the flesh. It makes falsehood sound enlightened. And then we have the wisdom of anger. What's the wisdom of anger? This is what causes the soul to attack anything that would wake it up. We see this all the time. If you try to help someone and get them to see the light, what usually happens? They get mad. They get angry. That's the wisdom of anger coming out. It's like, what do you know? You're wrong. I know the truth. I'm wise. I know the truth. You're wrong. I'm not going to listen to you. That's the wisdom of anger, the false wisdom of anger. So you have all these forces interlocking, working together to keep the soul bound in a lot lower state of consciousness and keep it trapped and not allow it to wake up. And they reinforce each other. Now, here's a really interesting parallel to this, is that in the Bible, guess what? In the Bible, Mary Magdalene is possessed by 7 demons that get cast out of her. Kind of interesting, right? And later on, the church interpreted this symbolically as 7 vices, or even sometimes it got conflated with the 7 deadly sins. So 7 forces of darkness in some degree, right? So it's very interesting that in the Bible, Mary is possessed by 7 demons, but those demons get cast out. Here, Mary is describing her vision of defeating the 7 archons. Basically, if anyone would know anything about how to get rid of dark forces weirdly obsessed with the number 7, it would be Mary. It's just a very cool, very, very cool parallel. You know, in the Bible, Mary is possessed by demons and she's saved from the demons. Here, Mary is giving instructions on how to overcome the demons. Like, here's how you do it. So, the 7 powers of wrath confront the soul. And they all say to the soul this is what they say. Where do you come from, you murderer? And where are you going, conqueror of space? So let's break this down. At first, calling the soul a murderer sounds weird, but think about it symbolically. Murderer here means the soul has killed the forces of illusion that once controlled it. So the soul is destroying this archonic system of control. And so from their perspective, it's a murderer. Not murdering people, but murdering illusion. And then when the 7 powers of wrath call the soul a conqueror of space, which is an awesome, super cool title, by the way, the archons are basically accusing it of not treating the material world and the body as fundamental. You've conquered the illusion of space and time, basically. So here the 7 powers are being like, hey, where do you think you're going? You murderer, you conqueror of space. You're not going anywhere. Where do you think you think you can just free yourself from our control? Hell no. But the soul replies this. What binds me has been killed. And they're connecting it back to murder. As you see, she's the soul's confirming. What binds me has been, I am a murderer. I've killed my chains, what has bound me. What surrounds me has been overcome. My desire is gone, and ignorance has died. So she's killing off ignorance. She's killing off all these powers of enslavement that are keeping her down. So this isn't about confessing sins or being ethically or morally pure here. This is about waking the fuck up. The soul's like, you can't, I know what's going on. I know what I am. I know what you're trying to do. You don't have any power over me. And this is what the soul says. The final line to the 7 powers of wrath that the soul says, which is really cool. This is what it is. I love this. In an eon, I was released from a world, from a type which is above, and from the chain of forgetfulness, which exists only for a time. From now on, I'll receive the rest of the time of the season of the eon in silence. Okay. So what the hell is the soul talking about here? The soul is saying that within a higher order of reality, it was free from a lower one. So basically, like, no, I understand I'm from this higher order of reality. I was released from a lower one. I was released from a world and in a type, from a type which is above. I was released from what is low, because ultimately what is low comes from what is above. That's what the soul means by saying a type from a type which is above. It's referring to a lower pattern projected from a higher level of reality. Basically, the soul is saying, hey, look, I see through all the layers of illusion, the chains of forgetfulness. Yeah, maybe they once bound me, but I killed them. They're temporary. I'm not forgetful anymore. I know. And I know where I come from. I know where I'm going. I know that I'm not from the physical world. I know that I'm not just my body. I know that I'm divine. And I know that I am light. You can't stop me. You don't have any power over me. And this is really powerful because essentially what's happening here, and let's go back to what this video is about why most souls never escape. So here's the important thing to understand. This isn't necessarily about escaping the material world. You could loosely say there is a way to, of course you can transcend the material world, but here's the thing. In the Neogenian interpretation, I'm a Neogenian, the material world is not evil and it's not a prison. We are much more aligned with the Gospel of Thomas, which says the kingdom is within you and all around you. This is our kingdom. Earth is our kingdom. It's not this evil torture dungeon to escape from. It just has become like that because the people who rule this world are shit people. But it can change. And that's our whole point. The whole point of being here on Earth is not to escape it. The whole point is to transform it, to transform ourselves and transform the world. And ultimately, that is the only way to transcend the material domain. That's the irony, is that the people who are trying to escape the material domain aren't going to escape. They're just going to get pulled back in. Because the whole point is to transform yourself and the world. And that and the world is really important. That's the only way we as a collective transcend the material domain. So it's not about escaping, it's about transformation. You know, think about a caterpillar that wants to become a butterfly. Well, you have to go through the cocoon phase first. Or if you're playing a video game, you have to beat all the intermediary levels. You can't just skip to the last level. So people who are trying to escape reality are essentially trying to skip to the last level. You can't do that. You'll just keep respawning in the level that you're in. You have to beat that level to go to the next level, then the next level, then the next level, and then ultimately you transcend. And so that's key here. It's not about escaping the world. It's about transforming the world and transforming ourselves. That is critical. That is key. That's probably one of the biggest things that most people misunderstand when people start to understand that there's more to reality than this. Doesn't mean this is bad. It means it needs to be transformed. That's why we are here. That's the whole point. That's the whole purpose of our existence. We are divinities that are now here to shape this world according to the image of our light. Build the kingdom of heaven here on earth. And then ultimately, yes, we can transcend it and reach other domains, but that's our goal here, is to transform the world, transform ourselves. So when we're talking about escape, we should more think about it instead of like, oh, escaping Earth, escaping a lower state of consciousness. We are bound by the 7 forces, the 7 powers, the 7 archons that keep us bound into a lower state of ignorance. And we can escape that by overcoming them, by overcoming the ignorance that keeps us from understanding our divinity, the darkness that conceals truth, the desire that keeps us pulled in all these different directions and attached to things that are unhealthy from us, the wisdom of the flesh that mistakes bullshit for truth, and the wisdom of anger that makes us closed to any other ideas that feel foreign or different to us. Closed-mindedness, essentially. All of these forces are keeping us bound to a lower state of consciousness, and it's only by overcoming them that we can do so, that we can truly do so. So the key to understanding how to escape a lower state of consciousness is by overcoming these things. And by overcoming, we have to be very careful. We want to integrate them. So these are not necessarily our enemies to be destroyed, but rather powers that exist within us that need to be transformed. And desire is a good example of that. Desire is bad when it rules you, but it doesn't have to be. When you rule it, it becomes your servant and propels you towards your goals. So you see the difference there? You don't want to get rid of desire. If you got rid of desire, you'd never get out of bed. You just lay, you'd have no impetus to do anything. You just lay in bed all day. You have no desire. You don't want to have no desire. That's not a good thing. That's like having a car with no gas or no charge. It's just going to sit there. But you have to be able to guide it and direct it. So that's important. It's about identifying all the forces within us that are causing us problems and learning how to deal with them, not ignoring them, not praying super hard about them, but by figuring out what to do about them. So that is key. And then also what is key is what we talked about in the very beginning of what can see the vision in the first place is integrating our opposites. So it's essentially integrating your opposites, developing both sides of the psyche, unifying soul and spirit, integrating your shadow, stepping into your power, connecting to your higher self. This is how you reach higher consciousness. This is achievable. This is not something that you have to do. It's not about meditating on a mountain away from society for 30 years. You can achieve this. You can. Is it hard? Yes. Is it impossible? No. It's the same thing about working out. If you want to work out and lift a certain weight, you have to lift. You have to work. You have to lift it. If there's a super heavy weight and you want to lift it, if you haven't done any training and you try and lift it, you might think, oh my God, this is impossible. I can't do this. It's impossible. There's no way I can do this. But if you train and work out little by little, you'll eventually lift it. That's the same thing with higher consciousness. The problem is that hardly anyone actually trains their consciousness. So everyone is approaching this heavy weight of higher consciousness, trying to lift it, and they can't. And so people are like, oh, it's impossible. Or only once in every 2,000 years does someone come who's able to do it. No, it's just you got to work at it. You got to train your consciousness to do it. And one of the most effective ways is by integrating your inner opposites together. It's usually the last thing people want to do. But guess what? People don't generally like working out either. It's hard. It's annoying. It's painful. It's frustrating. But you get the results once you do it. So we have the same thing going here. People don't want to integrate their opposites. Mystical, intuitive, tarot readers generally don't want to take a class on philosophy or mathematics. Now, I'm being very stereotypical here to illustrate a point. Those who are highly rational, logical, atheistic materialists don't want to have anything to do with mystical woo-woo dreams and tarot and all that because they see it as all bullshit. It's not. It's the combination of the two. They're two different domains. One is about subjective experience. The other is about objective truth. And you have to marry the two together so that you can knit them together into full, whole, unified pattern. You need all these things. You need your emotions, your senses, your reason, your intellect, your intuition. You need all these things working together. And that's think about introvert and extrovert. Introvert, last thing they want to do is go out in front of people. An extrovert typically don't like being alone with their thoughts. But what do you need? You need to develop both. You need to actually be able to get out there, and you need to be able to be alone with your thoughts. You need both things. So that's the most critical step. That's what allows Mary to see the vision. And that's ultimately what allows the soul to start conquering all these powers, because it recognizes the powers for what they are. If you haven't integrated this, you're not going to recognize your ignorance. You're going to believe your ignorance. You're going to believe the foolish wisdom. The kingdom of the flesh is going to keep you bound to a bodily identity. The wisdom of anger is going to keep you closed-minded. You won't recognize this until you start to develop your different faculties together so that you can see it all for what it is, recognize the force. And once you recognize the forces, then you can start to overcome them. And that's what's very important here. We have Mary Magdalene confronting the seven powers. And Mary represents a Christ. She is this successor to Christ. She steps in his place. She has attained Christ consciousness, and now she's explaining how you can do so too. In the Gospel of Philip, it says, when you have gnosis, you are no longer a Christian, you are a Christ. That's what it's about. When you have knowledge, when you have understanding, when you know how things really are, you will become a Christ. It says those who have seen Christ become Christ. Those who have seen the Holy Spirit become the Holy Spirit. Those who have seen the Father will become the Father. Basically, when you see the thing and know what it is, you become the thing, because the thing is you. It is you. When you recognize what Christ really is, you'll become the Christ, because you realize Christ isn't some guy in sandals wandering around in Galilee obsessed with loaves and fishes. He's a principle within you. It's a principle within you. If you don't want to call it Christ, that's fine. You can call it something else. It doesn't matter what you call it. You can call it anything you'd like. In the Neogenian system, where we really talk about all awareness and the analog all, and developing structures in the psyche that model the totality of reality so that you can begin to step into a higher state, graduate from self-awareness to all awareness. So you could describe all these things in purely psychological terms if you wanted to. But remember, psyche comes from the word, Greek word for soul and mind. Psyche is soul and mind. So your soul is your mind is your soul. The mind and soul are defined differently depending on what we're talking about. So in the Gospel of Mary, there is a difference between like soul, mind, and spirit. the mind is what arises when the soul and spirit integrate. In the Neogenian system, you are an eternal mind. You are an eternal soul. That's what you are. Soul and spirit more correspond to like right brain functions and left brain functions, and the mind between more corresponds to higher consciousness. So essentially in the Neogenian system, you are an eternal soul, what we call a zeta. And you, by integrating your opposites, your left brain and right brain modes, simplified, is the way to achieve the mind between, which is higher consciousness, which allows you to develop all awareness. Anyway, if you don't know what all that stuff means, that's okay. You don't need to. I go into a lot of detail if you want the psychological breakdown of it in my book, Psychogenesis. Basically, psychogenesis is a psychology for higher consciousness. That's what that is. Psychogenesis is the psychology of higher consciousness. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, my friends. Really important stuff. This is how that you are able to escape from the chains of forgetfulness and lower consciousness and ascend to the heights of higher consciousness, all awareness, Christ consciousness, so that you're no longer a follower, you are your own savior. No longer a Christian, but a Christ. That's what it means. That's what this is all about. And so don't just watch this video and then do nothing about it. Actually put it into practice. Actually integrate it, because it's worthless if you don't actually put it into practice. But I hope you enjoyed it, my friends. As always, tell me in the comments if you watched all the way to the end. I always want to see who just watches 10, 15 minutes and then clicks off, and who really stays till the end and watches the whole thing. It's important to me to see who this is important to. So leave that comment, let me know. As always, remember, we are not a channel. We are a revolution of the mind. We're making higher consciousness go viral. And so when you spread this information, you help wake up more people. And you can do that simply by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Helps out a lot. If you want to help out even more, you can become a member, and on YouTube or Patreon, you'll get access to members-only videos and free downloads on inner transformation. There's a lot of cool stuff you can get, and it helps out. You can also help out by checking out my books, like the one that I just showed on screen. And if you want a free way to support, follow me on Spotify. I have a Spotify channel. You can follow me for free there. And it helps out a lot because we're spreading that fire on a completely new platform and reaching many, many minds over there. So I appreciate that, my friends. Links to all of those things, they are in the description of this video. I'm going to give a big shout out to everyone who supports, especially, let's see, Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, Dallas, Nusalina, Eric, Sol, Toronado, Banshee, Pop Out, Hyper Saiyan, Chris, Arkraziel, Joe, HKA, Masticate, and everyone else. Thank you very much. And if your name isn't up there yet, I have to update it. It'll be coming soon. But thank you all very much. My name is Morgue. I am Neogenian. Ad Astra.